Next motion is seal the closed session minutes of June 28, 2023. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Would you please stand and join me for a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance? As we stand for a moment of silence, please keep in your thoughts Robin Reel, who's a graduate of Woonsocket High and been a very important member of our family community. She just passed away this past weekend. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I see we have no guests this evening, so we will go into good and welfare. Anyone addressing the school committee during good and welfare, please begin with your name and address. Your comments shall be no more than 5 minutes of speaking time and should be in good decorum. Please be aware that the committee cannot respond to you during good and welfare, but may direct you to an appropriate member of the administration team or may meet with you directly after the meeting for further discussion. So do we have anyone who would like to address the school committee?
My name is Melissa Bubble. I am at 650 3rd Avenue, Woonsocket. I have recently been notified that our amazing principal that we had this past year will no longer be there. Ms. Cahill was amazing. All of our teachers and parents, to my knowledge, loved her. The upbeat character that she had brought in, the fact that she's also bilingual and flowed beautifully with Coleman. She also was very supportive with all students and families. She hosted a Meet the Principal breakfast and made sure that she got to know as many parents that came as possible. And anybody who couldn't attend, she made sure that she could meet with them if they wished to meet her. She was very effective with discipline and made sure that the punishment fit the crime, so to speak. For first-time rule breakers, she would talk to them and would take further steps if necessary. She also worked well with me and other parents to try to restart the PTO at Coleman. Which brings me to my next point. I've also learned that Abby may be returning. This upsets me to a very high level. Though she came with many positives, there was just too many negatives. There was parents who actually have PTSD from dealing with her. I am sure some, if not all, the teachers at Coleman feel the same. My question is why? Why would we take someone so amazing, Miss Cahill, away from the school? There's been too much change going on here. And furthermore, why Abby? She was unsupportive with us parents and we had to fight with her all of the time. Then there's the question of money. When we ever had events at the school, money was kept at the school, large amounts of money.
Melissa, excuse me. I would ask you to please refrain speaking out a specific individual, a former
Okay,
employee.
I apologize.
Thank you.
We had many issues with the other principal, and she did not work well with the PTO. I'm wondering why we're starting to change the principal yet again at Coleman. I feel that the past principal that we most recently had worked really well, and she was also bilingual, so she was able to work with all the families. I am considering, as well as some others, who might change the school where my son goes to because of the problems that we had, not this past year, but the year before. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to address the school committee? Seeing and hearing none, let's go into recognitions and announcements. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the school committee. I want to recognize The teachers, paraprofessionals, clerks and custodians and administrators who retired from the Woonsocket Education Department this year. I'm going to start with the teachers. Diane Askar had 35 years in the Woonsocket Education Department. Linda Becker, 26 years. Susan Lanoy, 35 years. Eileen LaRiviere, 20 years. Linda Morgenstern, 30 years. Pam Page, 32 years. Catherine Palmieri, 33 years. And Stephanie Roberts, 34 years. Our paraprofessionals who retired, Nancy Finbo, 33 years. Carol Horn, 29 years. Linda Krajewski, 26 years. And Yolanda Pagan, 26 years. We had 3 members of our local 1137, Elaine Boubiniere, 26 years. Linda Lizotte, 23 years. Leslie Plant, 6 years. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Bill Webb, the principal and director of the Woonsocket Area Career and Technical Center, 23 years. We had a nice retirement celebration for all of our retirees a couple of weeks ago. And I want to thank them for their years of service and dedication to the students, to the families, to their colleagues, and to this community. We're all a lot better having worked with them and having known them. So I want to congratulate them, and I wish them health and happiness in their retirement. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my recognitions and announcements.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. Anyone have any comments for him? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the recognitions and announcements. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the June 14, 2023 open meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any changes, deletions, corrections? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Present.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. I have one item that I'd like to discuss in purchases, Mr. Perrier. Maybe you can shed some light on the Robinson Green Beretta fee that we're paying for $117,000 that we've got listed there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is an adjustment to our current outstanding contract with Robinson Green Beretta to do the design for the auditorium. There was an increase to cost for RGB, and they are looking to pass that increase on to us.
Is that something that we've agreed to do that?
Well, we haven't agreed to do anything yet. It's if the school committee decides to move forward with that increase, and the increase is not in that amount. The increase is in the amount of $50,000. It's just an adjustment to the outstanding amount we have on our purchase order. So we have a little over 60. We'll be adding 50. So the new amount of $117,000 marks an increase of $50,000 in fees.
Is that something that we're advocating, you're advocating?
Yes, yeah, I am, because I think we'd like to move this project forward at this point and continue on with the auditorium project and really get that in the ground and running, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I think at this point, it would cost the district more money to reverse field, bring in a new architect and start this project anew.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll ask you, Dr. McGee, for your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You have our latest personnel appointments and changes in the Woonsocket Education Department. We're at the point right now where we're doing a few things where we're thankfully we are filling positions for next year, and we are also continuing to fill summer enrichment and summer school type positions for this year. So you have a total of 4 teaching positions for next year, and we have 1 pre-K resource teacher. I'm sorry, 4 resource positions for next year. Below, you'll find the hourly stipend and extracurricular positions, which are primarily for the extended school year. We have school-based social emotional learning summer planning team, which is a group that's going to be working together to plan for next year around the social emotional different types of priorities that we have across the district and the district as a whole. It's a pretty extensive list, which is a good thing, which means that we're filling a lot of the summer positions, and we're also, as I said, starting to work on the 23-24 open positions
Excellent.
as well.
Chairman, could you explain what transferred from displaced means? Many of these positions, maybe Mickey can explain.
Yeah, Mickey, do you want to?
So the predominant list of transfers are for the paraprofessionals. We had a annual job fair for them in which any vacancies are up, they can apply for and transfer into. Some individuals are displaced, meaning that if they were hired after October 15th, their position was only theirs for the school year, and that they had to go to the job fair and reapply. Alternatively, students have moved, whether they moved out of district or if they were one-on-one or one-on-two and the student transferred to another school or another level, elementary to secondary, then they were instructed to go to the job fair as well. So displaced just means, one, that they weren't out of a job, just that the job that they currently held for the 22-23 school year is no longer available to them.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye. We have no school subcommittee reports this evening, but we do have some conferences and discussion items. I'll ask Ms. Morel to give us the special education update. Dawn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you is just an update on some of the state indicators. This time of year, when we're writing our grants for the IDEA funds, there are certain indicators that we look at to see how we're doing in special education. The first two indicators, because of the reporting system, there's a year lag in their reporting with the state. But for the 2021 school year, our graduation rate for students with IEPs rose to 87.8% as a district. That's the highest it's been in a while. And we beat the state rate of students graduating with IEPs. The state rate was 86.83%. Indicator number two is the dropout rate for students that have IEPs. Again, this is a one-year lag, so it's reporting on the 2021 school year. The district rate is 6.10% of students drop out with IEPs, and the state rate is 4.19%. However, 2 years prior to that, we were at 30% of students with IEPs that dropped out of school. So there's a significant decrease. A lot of that has to do with the data collection side of it, that we are reporting correctly and accurately more, and supporting that part of things, as well as increase in our academic supports for students inside the classroom. So both of those issues together have we've been able to rectify the dropout rate. Our survey works. This year, we were able to get 326 responses for students with IEPs. That rose from last year. We only had 197. Out of those responses, the district had favorable responses for students with IEPs at 78%, where the state had favorable responses at 77%. And then for early intervention, our indicator number 12, we were at 100% compliance with that. These are only a couple of indicators that I pulled out to share. And I can share more indicators at another time if you would like to look at that. Below is our snapshot of supports right now. From pre-K to 12, we have about 26% of our enrollment receiving special education services. That is about 1,434 students. It's a very, very slight decrease. I want to say about maybe 4 or 5 students from the last time I reported out. And this is from pre-K to 12. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
sorry. The indicator 12 early intervention transition,
Yes.
100% compliance. Could you explain what that is?
Yep. So when students turn 3, or they're just about to turn 3 years old, if they're receiving services through early intervention, the early intervention agencies will reach out to our early childhood coordinator, and they start setting up meetings to see if the student will qualify for special education services. Once they turn 3, the school department has to pick them up if they qualify. That is a huge indicator for pre-K. That we keep up with the timelines. They're very strict with when they first reach out. We have to make contact with the parent. Typically, we go into the house and meet the student in the house. However, since COVID, we've been doing that meeting either virtually or at McPhee. Or at one of the elementary schools. And then the second meeting is when we meet with the parent and we talk about any additional testing that we may do. And we have to have all the testing and the eligibility completed by the student's 3rd birthday. And if they're receiving services, they have to start on their 3rd birthday.
So the student is 3 years old. Have they said they're going to apply to pre-K when they're 4?
This has-
So how do we connect with them at 3?
So the early intervention, Community Care Alliance has an early intervention section. So their caseworker at early intervention will reach out to our coordinator and give us all the information, and they connect us that way. Some of the students will come into our pre-K programs if that's an appropriate setting for them. Some of the students only have speech services, so they may do that as a walk-in. We also do some pre-K walk-in groups, because sometimes the families are not ready to have their child be in a pre-K classroom 5 days a week for 4 hours or 3 hours. So they only do like an hour once a week with the resource teacher, the speech pathologist, and the OT. We are very creative with our pre-K programs.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, there's a lot I didn't understand.
There's a lot
3
to
years
it.
old, we're starting with them.
Incredible. Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file a special education update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, I'll ask Mr. Perrier to give us his finance update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of the school committee this evening is the April 2023 fiscal update. Currently, the school department is anticipating a $115,000 surplus. To the financial highlights on the revenue side, state aid has been adjusted to the amount that was approved in June 2022 by the legislation, as our budget was finalized before the states. On the expenditure side, all regular salaries are $3.65 million under budget at this time, when netted with the employee turnover allowance of $1.47 million. To support the overall salaries, $2.18 million under budget. The district has moved salaries to ESSER 3 for this fiscal year only, which has directly added to the surplus. Substitute salaries line is projected to be $137K over budget due to several variances or vacancies spread across the district. Medical expenses are currently $1.27 million over budget. During our next finance subcommittee in July, we will begin the discussion about using OPEB funds or transferring some of our money from our medical set-aside account to offset this overage. I anticipate this meeting happening in mid-July. Not only will we be talking about that, but we will be talking about budget adjustments for what's happening with the state, because we have picked up a little money with the state, about $1 million, just to inform the school committee. And we will incorporate that into our new budget, as well as where our final ESSER 3 expenses will happen for next fiscal year. Additional speech therapists, contracted nursing services, personal care attendants, and behavioral interventionists have all been needed beyond what was originally budgeted. The district has moved some of these expenses to ESSER 3 in order to cushion the overall expense of the general fund. At this time, we have moved expenses off the general fund for building improvements, furniture and fixtures, and technology-related hardware. As we continue the closing process, which we are now getting into now that we're at the end of June, we'll have final numbers, and we'll figure out at that point how much we're going to transfer off into those capital funds, as well as what we're going to need to use for ESSER 3. Finally, as I stated earlier, we're projecting $115,000 surplus for the fiscal year, and we still do have some flexibility under ESSER 3 and ESSER LEAP. We will continue to close those grants out because, again, we have reached the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. So the next couple of months will be in full closeout mode for this fiscal year, as well as finalize and retouch the budget for fiscal year '24. If the school committee has any questions, I'd love to answer them now.
And on the revenue side, Mr. Perrier, when I look at the details of the local revenue, I see that we had budgeted some 17,072 from the city. And
Yes.
we got our 16.4 million, which means that the 656,000 that we asked the city to contribute, the 4%, they didn't come through.
Well, they did come through with some money. They did come through with 250,000, so we didn't get the full ask, but we did get a portion of that money for last year.
Right, so it's small in comparison to what we asked for.
Correct.
So we're ending up with an operational surplus, almost a break even. 115,000 on some 80-something million is basically a break even.
Yeah, I would consider that a break even, correct?
Right. So if we would have gotten some of that money, or the money we asked for, at least we'd be a little bit more comfortable. Not much, but we'd be more comfortable in terms of going on, especially since we've been asking for that 4%, or that could have been made available by the city for several years now. And we would be in much better shape than we are now in terms of, right now, thank God we have ESSER, but without that, it might have been difficult.
Yes, I'd agree with your assessment, Mr. Chairman.
Now, these numbers we have are as of April 30th.
That's correct.
So I know you've encumbered, they're all encumbered through June, but obviously there may be some changes as we plow through the May numbers and the June numbers in terms of, we'll have to wait and see how everything shakes out because we still may have medical that we can't control, et cetera, et cetera.
There's always a one-time medical expense adjustment. We don't get that money. We actually don't receive that final adjustment till usually September, and that is the incurred but not yet received invoicing that happens. So usually we don't finalize our medical number till the end of September. That's usually, and that's probably the biggest number that we have to wait and finalize. So we really can't move forward. I think we can move forward pretty comfortably at this point, but just so the school committee is aware, these numbers are not finalized and set in stone until probably September 30th.
Right.
That's really, at that point, we've closed out all of our POs, we've done all our journal entries and we've accrued all of our payrolls, and we've closed out everything we have. So bank reconciliations, I don't want to bore you with all the debits and
You're
credits.
not boring me at all,
So,
Mr. Perrier,
Yeah,
at all.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That means once we get to that point when we finalize this fiscal year in September, right? Typically, and of course, the audit happens after that.
Correct.
But we'll finalize, and that's when we'll determine what pockets or where we can reallocate some funds, whether to other funds like the capital or wherever, or ESSER, et cetera.
Absolutely correct.
All right, I just want to make sure that we know that these are estimated numbers from, especially on the encumbered side, because things can change. And right now, we're projecting basically a break-even budget, a break-even operations for this year.
That is correct.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke?
did the General Assembly finally come up with some legislation on the financials for the districts?
For the, are you talking about for the funding formula?
Funding formula.
I haven't heard the latest on that. I am a little behind on what the legislation has done the last couple of weeks. So I'm not aware. I believe they didn't, and someone can jump in if I'm wrong on this. I know there was talk about the everybody eats. I think that was voted down on the House side. Again, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I wasn't aware of any changes yet to the funding formula. None of that has come across my desk. Usually I am informed. There's a rather large email thread that goes out when things do end up getting passed, and I am usually on that. So I haven't seen anything come across my desk yet, but I will certainly report back to the school committee as soon as we do. Just so you know, as we're talking about that, we did actually have to prepare two different budgets for our nutrition fund for next year. One, if we do go the CEP route, and one if we continue the route that we've traditionally used here in Woonsocket. So I know we're kind of preparing for both of those scenarios right now. And when the House and the Senate finalize what they're doing and go into recess, we can move forward with confidence what we're going to do.
It seems to me, based on folks in Providence, that we're getting around 82 million in terms of funding, which is pretty much what we had budgeted, what we set up for our budget this year.
It's about
But it's not any lower. It's maybe a couple of
about a
million.
million, not quite a million. It's it's about $1 million additional dollars that we'll be looking to add into our budget for next year. And just talking to you right now, that's probably mostly going to go into the medical line. Looking at how our medical's tracked this year, that's a line that's going to need a little bit of extra care as we go into next fiscal year.
Correct, right. Mr. Leclerc, you had a comment.
I just wanted to piggyback off of the local funding. I mean, we again got nothing from the administration except for that 250 from the council. That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. 250. That was the increase.
We do get money. We did get money, extra money from the state. But with that being said, that still doesn't cover what we need to be fully funded.
The last I looked, no, we're still not 100% fully funded per the funding formula. I haven't looked at next year yet. I know there's a pretty significant increase on what the state is giving us. So when you combine those numbers together, are we at 100%? I haven't looked at that yet, so I can't comment on what's going to happen next year.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, the formula hasn't been changed dramatically. A lot of the items are still categorical, so that doesn't really help us. It'd be much better if it was stuck into the main formula, because we get a lot more. But Sylvie, any other questions, comments? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the finance update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Hey, Vice Chair Burke, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we're going to new business. Dr. McGee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So,
I'm not surprising you, are you?
no, not at all. No, absolutely. We're always on the same wavelength.
Usually, yes.
We are, no. So I'm very, very excited to announce the first item under new business. The committee, I know the committee is aware. I'm going to let the community know that last year, the Woonsocket School Committee approved a policy on establishing a student representative from Woonsocket High School to the Woonsocket School Committee. This would be the first ever, I believe, ever in Woonsocket High School, Woonsocket School Committee history. So Mr. Gio went to work at the high school and established a process by which a student was selected to serve as the student representative to the Woonsocket School Committee. So I am very proud to announce this young man is an outstanding young man, academically, character. We've worked with him, and some committee members have had some interaction with him at various events over the years. But I want to welcome and announce Matthew Cuson as Woonsocket High School's student representative to the Woonsocket School Committee. Congratulations, Matthew. Looking forward to working with you. It's so important to have a student voice and student voices on the school committee and in the district. And Mr. Gio could not have picked a more outstanding student and young man for this role. So welcome, and I believe you'll be starting officially in September. So I'm very, very excited to work with Matthew.
Again, congratulations. Good job. Excellent.
Welcome.
The second item is, I guess, we're going to welcome Natalie Fleming as Director of SEL, but I guess
So
That's not happening.
I was hoping to tonight.
but-
Unfortunately, she declined the offer. She had accepted the offer a few days ago, and we learned earlier today that she has unfortunately declined the offer. So The position is, it will continue to be advertised, and hopefully, at some point,
Will be
July
welcome.
might be a stretch, but hopefully by the August meetings, I will have someone
Okay.
to let the committee know, has taken on the position of social emotional learning, health and wellness director in the district. So
Okay. The next item, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve an amended school year calendar 2023, 2024. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Is there something you want to go over on this?
I would, just briefly. So the Woonsocket Education Department 23-24 calendar saga continues. I'm hoping to put an end to it this evening. And by the way, it's through no Woonsocket Education Department doing. This has purely been on the state level. But so the change is, and it's not a change to the end of the school year. There are no drastic changes. The change is in April. Initially, April 23rd was designated as the presidential preference primary here in Rhode Island. But because that the 23rd falls on a Jewish holiday, the state has changed that date to April 2nd. So if you look in your on the modified calendar, it has April 2nd and not April 23rd as a no school day. So that's the change. Again, that doesn't have any effect or any impact on graduation or any impact on the last day of school. We're just basically flipping 2 days where that's it. So
Sure.
and I'm hoping that this is the last one, but I think it will be. So
I said that last month, Dr.
I did
McGee.
say that. I said that twice. Yes. Well, you know what they say about 3 times, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
I just want to say, and the community knows that the schools are used for all the election sites. in the
Exactly.
City. So that's why it impacts
Absolutely.
the schools.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
The next item, Dr. McGee, is that something we need to table?
So the next item, the discussion on the drafted right to read act, MOU, I'd ask the committee to table that. We're still in the process of finalizing the MOU with the union before we take it to the committee.
I'll make that motion to table this item. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any discussion? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to table the memorandum of understanding with the Woonsocket Police Department. I guess that's still not ready for us to wrap up. Do we have a second on a tabling motion?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any discussion? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus. Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the contract extension with Durham Bus Services. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee, Mr. Perrier, someone? Mr. Notoriani, we haven't heard from you tonight.
Oh, it's-
Maybe you want to address this.
It's all Al.
he'd love to address this.
It's a one-year extension. I think we should do it. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Notoriani? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Having nothing else on our agenda, I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:35. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by everyone. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.